Hey, I'm Tom. That back there's Mike. And I feel like those of us hardcore wrestling fans of a certain age, our opinions towards what good workers, or whatever the phrase you want to use, exciting wrestlers, whatever, they were all kind of framed and formed by the WCW World Television Title. And I'd love to do a brief history of the World TV title, but there's a lot to it. I don't have time to do a 2-hour video. So instead, I'm going to do something that has never been done before. I'm going to break new ground. I'm going to be a cis white male giving his opinion about wrestling on YouTube without being asked. I'm going to give you my personal listing of the best WCW World Television Champions of all time. Now let's set some ground rules. First off, we're doing the WCW World Television title, not the NWA television title. My timeline is January 1st, 1990 to April 10th, 2000, when Russo and Bischoff made Jim Duggan give back the TV title and they never made another champion again. It's more my area of expertise that decade. Bless Johnny Weaver's heart, but I'm not the guy that can tell you about him. And also, most lists of these kind would be like a top 5 or a top 10, something real sleek and sexy. Listen, man, I'm not like most girls. You're getting a top 4 from me. And I definitely suggest you stick around for the whole video because number 1 and number 2 are probably who you think they are, but the order is controversial. That's your teaser to watch the whole thing, so that the algorithm suggests me to more viewers. You're one of those people that really needs a top 5 to make it, round enough for you. Number 5 can be Paul Orndorff. You there? You happy? All right, let's start with number 4. Johnny B. Bad. Throughout the video, we'll talk about the TV champion formula, which you have the 10-minute time limit, and the heel stretches it out, babyface out wrestles him, but he keeps the belt because he goes to the 10 minutes. Johnny B. Bad's strength to me as a TV champion is that he could not rely on that formula because he was a babyface champion, which is hard enough to do. He had to buck the whole system to keep his runs entertaining. And he did it. He's really the only landmark TV champion of that 10-year period that's a babyface. It's very, very interesting. He wins the belt at Fall Brawl 94 and immediately gets sucked into a feud with the Honky Tonk Man, which could have been more interesting if they were willing to lean into the whole, Honky Tonk Man was the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion thing, and the Intercontinental and the TV title kind of similar, but they weren't. And it was mostly Honky Tonk Man going, I can play, dance, and sing, blah, 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 blah. And Johnny B. Bad's like, well, I can do this. This is what Johnny B. Bad would do sometimes. He put his hand on his stomach. And yeah, that first reign, the matches were kind of stinky because Honky Tonk Man, especially in WCW, he was not having it. But the second reign is, in my opinion, where the magic really happens. The majority of the second run is based around the matches with DDP. I can't say what anybody else hasn't already said. They way overachieved. And yeah, DDP had advantages, but he still had to go put in the work, And that series for the TV title in the fall of 95 between Johnny B. Bad and DDP was that first step that Dallas needed to become Diamond Dallas Page, And it really is a credit to Johnny B. Bad that he took a guy who really had no credibility on screen at that point as a threat to anyone and made him look credible. And not just credible, he brought Dallas from like the opening card guy who everyone remembered was a manager all the way to like a mid-card champion. A big jump that DDP definitely wouldn't have been able to get to where he was without that first step. And as much as anything he did with the TV title, I do also want to give him credit because for most of the mid-90s, he was like the perennial TV title champion. And I feel like that gave the belt as much credibility as anything. That a top star in the company specifically says, my goal is the World TV title. More than just throwing the belt on a top guy just to do it. I feel like a top star targeting a quote secondary title does way more for its credibility than anything. Johnny B. Bad, number 4, best TV champion of all time in my opinion. He was able to give the belt credibility due to what he did before he got the belt, when he was going after the belt, as well as being able to break the TV title match formula and still stay an interesting champion. Number 3, stunning Steve Austin. Without a doubt, Steve Austin would go on to be the biggest star of anyone we're talking about, but I'm specifically referring to stunning Steve in 91-92 when he was the TV champion. He has one hell of a run. He stabilizes the title after a really solid run with Arn Anderson, Bobby Eaton, those guys. We'll talk about that here in a bit. It needed a stable champion, and Steve Austin comes in literally within weeks of joining the company. It's not like he had had a ton of experience beforehand, and he jumps in and becomes the cornerstone TV champion of that era. And the TV title was a workhorse title. You needed to have really good matches, as well as have enough credibility to be someone, while also being able to give out that credibility to your challengers by having them come this close to beating you. Again, Austin had no real TV equity nationally. He comes in, he's just a star. He fits with the belt. Not only does he fit with the belt, he grows with it at a really hard time. Ric Flair leaves the company, like right when Austin wins the belt. And the company's in chaos, everything's on fire, and he's like the one steady part. Again, he just jumped on the ship. With the exception of a few weeks in the spring of 92, he pretty much holds on to the World TV title from summer 91 all the way into fall of 92, well over a year between his two reigns. And he's working with everyone on the roster. He's doing the Dangerous Alliance tags, 6-man, 8-man tags. And that whole time, he's a star that is worthy of the television title, while also boosting his own credibility at the same time to become a bigger star. It's a really hard spot to put a new guy in, but Austin succeeds with flying colors. He has the great TV title match with Dustin at Halloween Havoc 91. He's bebopping around, working all these great matches with these baby faces. The Barry Windham Saturday Night matches where he loses and wins the TV title back are both supremely good. And in Clash 20, him and Ricky Steamboat, they were such great opponents. What a match. Steve Austin's TV title run between those two reigns is the perfect use of, again, a quote secondary title in a promotion, where you have a new guy and you give him a real long run with it, and by the time he's done, he can work with anybody on the roster because he stepped up to the plate. He's having all these great matches. He's cutting these really good promos. He has star presence. He's beating people in television title matches. He's living up to the formula that Arn Anderson had set for him while being brand new to national television. It's beautiful. Before we get to number 2 and number 1, just a reminder, if you've not done so already, subscribe to the channel, please. It'd be really nice of you. I'm still nowhere near 100,000 and my kids don't respect me. Now, I mentioned earlier, number 2 and number 1 on my list are probably the number 2 and the number 1 that you're thinking of, that like everybody thinks of, but they're not in the order that most people would have them in. And that is why I'm doing this video. Because again, if I have a unique opinion that you disagree with, I put it on the internet, you get mad at me in the comments, and then more views come in. More moolah in my pocket. Thanks, AdSense. Number 2, the Enforcer, AA, Arn Anderson. That's right, I did it. I said it. The man that many people would say is the best television champion of all time. The person that is synonymous with that title. And I said he's second best. And this is no slight on Arn Anderson. Depending on the day, he's either my first or second favorite wrestler of all time. He is the only wrestler that my dad ever liked. He is one of the all-time greats. We have to keep in mind a couple of things. This is from January 1990 until the middle part of 2000. The run he had starting in January 86 where he beat Wahoo McDaniel, you know, that's the one that a lot of people think of as like the landmark TV title reign. This doesn't cover that period. I'm sorry. When he won the belt from Great Muta in January 90, he holds it for almost a year. That's a great title run. I think if we were ranking title reigns specifically in that 10-year period we're talking about, that run would be the best one of all of them. But that's not what this video is about, baby. Why'd I call you baby, honey? We had a whole decade we're covering here. Arn had a great run at the beginning of the decade, and then a second, almost as good run in 1991. Then he had a run that was okay in 1995. There's a lot of time in between there where he was not television champion. And the fact that he wasn't like the perennial TV champion for the decade, that knocked him down a peg in my mind. I cannot discount that first title reign. Like I said, probably the best reign of any of the WCW World TV title runs. He's having great matches on TV on almost a weekly basis with all sorts of wild and weird talent. And then he gets into this weird TV title work rate throuple with Bobby Eaton and the Z-Man, where they're flip-flopping the belt around. That's a lot of fun too. I think that's great. But then he loses it at Super Brawl in May of 91. He doesn't get back to the belt till 1995. This time the roster ain't what it was then. They have to gimmick up the title run. Colonel Parker has this fishbowl full of golden coins. It's like, if you could beat Arn Anderson for the TV title in the time limit, we'll give you these coins. Shouldn't the World TV title be enough? And like, Arn's having good matches with like Tim Horner and Brad Armstrong, but like, unfortunately, as good as Brad Armstrong was, he didn't have any sort of credibility in 95. So it just seemed like Arn was spinning his wheels, waiting for the Renegade to come down to the ring and do this and all those things he did. So again, I don't want to sound like I'm dogging Arn, because I cannot emphasize enough, the 1990 year-long reign was fantastic, but we are covering a 10-year period. And for me, for my taste, as great as he was in the 1990s, there was one television champion that stood taller. At number one, his lordship, Blackpool, England, Lord Steven Regal. Mr. Regal was the television champion of the 90s. Like, for me, kind of like folks a little bit older than me think of Arn Anderson as the TV champion. When I think of the WCW World Television Championship, I think of his lordship. Because it felt like he was either the champion or the guy that was about to win the belt for like most of the mid-90s. He wins the belt the first time at Fall Brawl 93 from Ricky Steamboat, which that was a big show of faith with the WCW booking committee. Ricky Steamboat, a top guy. And they have Lord Steven Regal beat him for a championship in a long, good match on pay-per-view. When at that point his run had been okay, he was starting to really get the crowd to hate him, but he hadn't gotten to show what he really had in the tool bag, so to speak. Talking about Arn having some weak contenders for his last TV title reign. Lord Steven Regal had a pretty weak bag of contenders himself for that first one of his. I mean, Todd Champion was one of the guys he feuded with for the belts. Todd Champion. And guess what? Lord Steven Regal made it good. He made Todd Champion look good. And then there's those really good Larry Zbyszko matches where they swap the belt in the middle of 1994. Larry Zbyszko's fine. His best works as a heel, though. Larry Zbyszko was never known as this great babyface. He was so good in his role that Larry Zbyszko, who'd been at the commentary desk for like a year and change at this point, and hadn't really ever had a substantial babyface run, and didn't really have a reputation for being like a great quote-unquote worker or whatever that is. Again, everybody made the jokes about Larry Zbyszko's matches not making contact for the first 20 minutes. But his lordship took on the challenge, and they had two of the best TV title matches of the decade. His lordship goes on to lose the belt to Johnny B. Bad at Fall Brawl, and then they pull him out of the TV title division for a bit to team with Bobby Eaton as the Blue Bloods. August 1996, he wins the belt from Lex Luger on Saturday night. Kind of a weird situation. Like, Luger had been healed, and the NWO comes in. They help out Regal, but they're not it's a whole weird, messy booking thing. Mr. Regal takes the bull by the horns. And by the end of that reign, he has more momentum than he had ever had any point in his WCW run. He was running with this idea in his promos. Since the NWO had won all the other belts, he, by being the World TV Champion, was the de facto, in canon, in kayfabe, top wrestler in WCW, because he was the only champion. And he was calling out Hogan, he was calling out Piper, and you could tell that fans slowly but surely were starting to look at him differently. That he took a platform that really only ever got guys to about here, and through his work and through his mouth, he was getting here with it. Unfortunately, the booking didn't follow the momentum, but all of a sudden he's being looked at by fans as a threat, a real, not a mid-level threat, but maybe he could take Piper, you know? It got to the point where when he beat Ultimo Dragon to win the belt back at Slamboree 97, short of Ric Flair, he got the best babyface response on that entire show. It's not hyperbole to say they could have run with Steven Regal as a threat to the NWO based on a TV title reign, which is impossible to think of with any other champion. And also going back to me talking about how Arn in the 1990 reign had all sorts of weird opponents, nobody who held that belt throughout the 90s had more variation in both style and skill level of opponents than Steven Regal did in 96 and 97. One night he's having a really good 10-minute time limit draw with Psychosis, and the next he's putting on a one-man show with Ice Train. Made Prince Iaukea into a threat for a bit, and he's also working with Ray Jr. and making that size difference look like nothing. Mr. Regal took the urgency of the British round system, varied it a bit for the 10-minute time limit. And he didn't just become an effective champion in the style that had previously been set by guys like Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson, but he made it his own. And he brought it into the late 90s at a time when it probably shouldn't have worked because everyone was getting so jaded and things were moving faster, and the matches still worked. And that is my argument for why Lord Steven Regal is the best WCW World Television Champion of all time. There's my list, my top 4. I want to know what you think. I want to know if you're mad at me right now. So throw it in the comments. Give me your opinions on the WCW World Television Title and your favorite champions. I'll probably reply. I don't have a life. Again, like the video, subscribe, do all the things. This is the part where all the people that have helped out the channel, that'll pop up there. So many of you, you're so kind. Thank you for not just giving me your eyeballs, but also your dollars. Appreciate you a whole bunch. So once again, my name is Tom. That there is Mike, and I don't have enough tissues for my issues. Only one.